Hello and good day to you. So what you've got in front of you is my slides for system thinking. I'm trying to write down my ideas for the objects I'm going to need for my still untitled game. I'm thinking I get it all sorted and then I can play with the systems and hopefully a bolt of inspiration will hit me from some clever muse and I'll know exactly what to call this thing. I'm going to have a week off coming up. I haven't talked to my boss about this yet, but I'm sure he'll let me work that out around whenever people are off. Or I'm just assuming with the amount of time people have over Christmas, this is a good time for me to get it done in one go. As my previous quote on the first page says, you can do a decent stab at writing the bare bones of a computer game in a week, but within a month you'll be tearing your hair out, and within a year you'll have changed it all. So I'm trying to make sure that I document all my ideas first and get everything so I feel that I'm not sort of just going to be making stuff up as I go along. High level state, I'm thinking game over, city building, loading, telegraph, plan, resolve turn, win lows, unload map, city building or game over. And what I mean by this is the game over state is going to be your main screen where either you've been returned back to the main screen or you're setting up a new game. If you then get into a game, you'll start at the city building screen where you can choose to plop down some more buildings. There probably has to be a tutorial for that, and maybe there'll have to be a flag. I'll get to that later, how I'm going to handle flags. I'm then going to have a loading because of any creation of a new combat will need generating enemies and the like, and storing those up into arrays for the coming combat rounds. So I'm thinking that because I'm trying to recreate some of the ideas of how you play into the breach as my starting point. I'm not planning for this to be a real-time game. I'm planning it to try and be as strategic and in-depth as possible. The core of the game is going to be this telegraph, plan, resolve, turn. And that's where I'm going to focus most of my time. It's quite easy to use a num or SFML, which I am using, uses a actual state system. If you don't have that, I'm pretty sure you could program up a object to handle states quite easily. Literally, I'm just going to have it that you can pass between these values, and you could just potentially just use a variable that handles and controls the memory for the rest of the game, and the states and the control flow. And the idea being is, in main, this will be deciding which of the objects is going to be run. I'll go back a second. I always have something like loading or unloading for any game that I do. So states between major states, because it's always good just to have something to drop in checks and variable changes as necessary, and mostly because you don't want in the main loop where you're trying to get the best frame rate, you don't really want to be doing huge amounts of checks and variables every single frame. It's good to have a sort of a clean up state that it cycles through either periodically or at the end of a action. So I'm setting up the standard objects is the world, engine to manage visualization, though I might just fold that into the city, which is really just going to store most of the information. the city needs to store everything because it needs to have the central functions for calling, if to make a shot or make a move, and doing pathfinding and checking whether a given move is legal or not. So I'm not great at pathfinding. It's something I have to go and think about. I don't think it could be that different from the ant swarm optimization done previously. Essentially cycle through all the different things nearby and count up the value for it. Though getting that to be really efficient and fast in cycling might be quite something that I need to look into. I can feel a Python video coming on about different pathfinding algorithms. I'm just saying that's probably where I'm going to end up. Entities, mechs and monsters. So they're all going to need access to the city to make the checks. So they're probably going to get stored in there and tagged around. So I can sort of see this big city object that everything else gets called on. Core loop. So every turn, telegraph gets set up. So the creatures set their actions and decide their actions, and then need to store their actions inside themselves as different set of variables. So if the player comes along and messes with that creature, moves it around the combat area, shoves it left to right, it's still going to fire in the same direction. There's something I need to think about there of, is there a simple language I can use to describe attacks that don't take up much time? Not so sure about that. That might be something I need to sit down and think about. So I'm probably going to have multiple animals in array, and they're going to store those attacks in the variables in themselves, so that probably private variables, though I guess maybe if the easiest way to perform recalculating it is to either recall a function on them when they get attacked and moved or something. I don't know. I think all these values have to be stored in them as values that only change fully when the turn's resolved. So you can reverse actions and play a bit like chess. Like, I didn't let go of my hand on that one, I want to move it backwards, and have certain amount of replay the turn. I probably need it so you can that these variables are stored in a past variable and a future variable with the same name, and it's only when the past variable only flips to the future variable at the end of the turn when everything's resolved and everything's slotted into place. So that should all work out. I'm thinking just a normal fitness function. Each enemy will have some concept of maybe 2 or 3 different behaviours, and choose one randomly, and that will set out how it will move into position and what it will consider most important, i.e. move to a place where you can shoot a building. If it choose the building, which leaves you to move the furthest away from the current mechs to make people move around and things like that. That would be something quite simple, I think. Though I'd have to go and cycle through all the different spaces in the city map to work out where best to go. The mechs probably need something similar to store values, so you can return back to the start of a turn if necessary. And yeah, obviously simple controls to starting point. First click move, second click shoot. I'm thinking first mouse button, first weapon, second mouse button, second weapon, and that's going to be just because it's going to be a minimum viable product to begin with. It's probably something that I look at updating later on. The big thing for me that's really got me a bit scratching my head is how to build this engine very well, make all these tiles tessellate properly. It's going to be the first thing I need to build and the first thing I need to get sorted. I don't think it's that problematic in reality, but it's something that has got me a little bit jittery because it's the one area, the visualization is one of the one areas where I think you spend the most time on, and if you get it wrong, it's really hard to get it right afterwards. So yeah, I'm going to spend some time on that. I can't imagine that the first iteration is going to require a board which is larger than the screen. So in one sense, I probably don't need to create two views. I can probably create one view of the screen and just have you move around it. So that's going to be really simple. Tertiary loop. This is where I think I'm going to have to do most of my work once I've got my first minimum viable product set up. That's because a lot of the management systems are all going to go here, a lot of the story systems, and I haven't even really considered this. And I kind of think I need to leave this for now and just put it as a box to say I need to look at that, because I don't have any concept of tone, I don't have any concept of what the story is going to be, and it seems okay to me to say I don't know what I'm going to do there and I'll come back to it. It seems better to do it like that than overpromise and start saying it's going to have this amazing story, it's going to have all this, because I genuinely think you should nail the game first, and story and other things can be added in later. And because I prefer this to be more about emergent gameplay and sort of random things interacting with each other, I don't really want to spend all my time figuring out how to do this up front. What I want to do is layer that as a series of agile projects to sort of add one bit at a time, add one feature to make the tertiary loop much more interesting and much more something that you want to play with, because I'm sure this will be really boring to play repeatedly unless that tertiary loop's really complicated and has lots of interesting different things. Which brings me to the final point. I probably haven't looked into this at all, but I think enemies and weapons for the mechs are something where I could do with some form of polymorphism, taking an existing class and being able to modify it and change the way it attacks and what it does. I haven't really sat down with the combat system to think this is how this is going to run. What I need to do is get it so it does run first, and then I can think about other things. So that's going to be another point to set up a bunch of agile little projects of once I've built the minimal viable product, I go along and take one action to make the enemies more abstract and something that I can produce much more randomly as a set of strengths and weaknesses and weapons that can be produced. Now, the weapons I think are going to be problematic because they need to slot into the mechs and be associated with the mechs, but I'm not sure whether I could get away with randomizing them, given that they probably really change core gameplay if you get a weird set of attributes. Though I also kind of like the idea of making them random. I think I'm probably going to stick to that as a list of weapons to be added, and have it so that they're that they're available and there, and I just keep on adding new weapons rather than try and make it into a sort of a situation where you can create your own weapons and put all these weird effects. I think that probably would break the game. Though I don't know. It's something that I'm thinking about. Abstracting enemies to make it so I can produce them randomly. Because I've got this idea that it should have no random elements, or at least no random outputs. It can have random inputs, as in you can see on the screen something that's been randomly generated, but it's not sat there and just sort of told you've been hit for a random number of damage. It sort of sets up a random thing, and then you've got time to strategize and think about it. And that's where I come to the chess element. I think I have to be careful with abstracting enemies for balance reasons there as well. Though I kind of think that might be part of the game, because you are meant to be eventually dying in this, and I can see it that the way that should work is these enemies keep on getting harder and harder, and the easiest way to make an enemy that you can just keep on making harder and harder is something that can be randomly generated, and can be randomly generated +1 standard deviations or whatever way of generating X amount of gameplay rounds, so that they sort of creep up in sort of difficulty in all different ways. And the last thing is something that will be standard for anybody who's thought about it, is that I probably need an observer class for achievements and flags, and just have it so it's just an array that can add events to, and others can go and look up and check if an event's happened. That seems obvious. I know that a lot of people don't think about things like that. Other things which I forgot to put here is I'm trying to make it so I've got holders to hold all the graphics in, so I'm not loading anything multiple times, and I can just have one call to the same thing and just do it that way. Some people might look at this as a video and go, well, he should have just got on and built it. I kind of feel that just doing it like this has made me sit there and get my head around a few things and slot a few ideas into place. I probably would have tried to build an engine and then realised the city where it stores all the numbers and everything was more important than the engine. If I hadn't done this sort of document first, it sort of picked up a few of the important things, the core gameplay, and it's also set me up for what comes after you've sort of created your minimal viable product, rather than it's not that before doing this I didn't know where I was going. It's that you sort of feel like you're in a bit of a haze and in a fog, and writing everything down and pretending to talk to somebody else about it and explain it actually has a lot of effect, and it's strange. It's interesting that it's so useful. So hopefully if you're watching this video and my ramblings, you will find this interesting. If not, I apologise for the crazy deluded stuff I'm saying, but hopefully we'll get there. Hopefully in a few weeks I'll have at least a starting product of a game that can then work on, and hopefully at the end of the year I'll have something of some value. So thanks, have a good day and a good night. Bye.